religious belief and what was religious practice. And they concluded that polygamy was a religious practice, not a matter of faith. And in their analysis, they quoted Jefferson, Jefferson's letter to the Danbury Baptists. So that's when it became part of American jurisprudence, when the Supreme Court quoted the separation of church and state as a founding principle in that case. That was U.S. versus Reynolds.
Okay.
Well, you mentioned James Madison, and my understanding is that he was sort of a protege of Thomas Jefferson, and at the time of the writing of our Constitution, Jefferson was in France. So isn't much of what James Madison's contribution, doesn't a great deal of that actually come from Thomas Jefferson?
Yes, I'm pretty certain that it does, because Jefferson drafted, and I believe it's the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom. It was a Virginia statute, and this is important to me because in Virginia, I lived in Williamsburg for a while, and I had the chance to spend some time there. And at that time, Williamsburg was the state house in Virginia, and it was possible for there to be in this community, which was primarily an Episcopal state at that time. All of the early states kind of had the religions that were most generally followed in these states during the time that England had, or the Great Britain was our leader. And occasionally in Williamsburg, a Baptist would appear. And the Baptist would be probably thumping the Bible and delivering the message to the people on the street, which was the only place where they could speak. And they would be apprehended, and they would go to jail, and they would spend time in jail for speaking contrary to the common sentiment. So therefore, the Danbury Baptists were concerned. And, there's a history of this, in our country, and it just disturbs me to no end when I hear people say, well, our country was this or it was that, because I find usually it's not very well-read consideration of who we are, where we've been, or what happened, at that time.
You have some other comments about Thomas Jefferson.
Jefferson's library is very unique at Monticello, because the texts that are there are primarily in Latin, and I don't know how many languages that he read, but I do know that he was studying very carefully the history of Latin and Greek culture, and those were formative elements in what contributed to the formation of our Declaration of Independence as well.
Well, back when Jefferson was was a candidate for presidency of the United States, his opponents accused him of being an atheist. Now, from what I read, it would be probably more appropriate to call him a deist. What is your view of that?
I would agree. I think that there were, at that time, many people who were deists in their approach to religion.
Meaning, as a deist as opposed to a theist, what is that distinction?
To my understanding of it is that a deist believed in God being present in nature, believed in a more that God lived within us, and interpreted For example, the Jefferson Bible was often given to congressmen when they accepted their position. And the Jefferson Bible was taken by Thomas Jefferson, and it was edited to his understanding that others might have written the text that we see, and to his understanding of what Jesus would have actually said. And so the emphasis of those words in the Jefferson Bible is, what is your moral character? How do you treat others? How does God live within you? How do you relate to your inner conscience?
So he might have even been a humanist in his day.
Quite possibly.
Let me just read another quote from a letter Thomas Jefferson wrote. He says, "I concur with you strictly in your opinion of the comparative merits of atheism and demonism, and really see nothing but the latter in the being worshipped by many who think themselves Christians." It seems that he had a very strong view of the practice of Christians, whereas he supported the humanity of Christianity, which I think may be what a Unitarian Church also practices. Am I right?
I don't know that. Let me go to another segment of what you just said, because I think that one of the things is that the demonism, to me, that comes out of much organized faith is a demonism based on fear. I think it is very easy, out of certain perspectives, to say this is an influence of which we should be afraid, and then to try to organize thinking in such a way, instead of reading the how do we treat each other into our hearts, reading instead, I am so afraid of what is going on. And I don't know if this has any bearing at all to recent events here in this country, but it seems to me like it was very easy to twist a fear of an unknown terrorist or terrorists, yes, and magnify that into a fear that became more important than the religion. And I'm going to go to the story of Jesus and the Great Samaritan, and the Samaritan who was the outsider who provided the assistance, the human good.
We've only got a couple minutes left. This half hour is going very fast. And Dennis, we've sort of left you out. Any comment you want to make about Thomas Jefferson?
I just think it's amazing that when Thomas Jefferson was president, and the time period leading up to the presidency, he let the people at that time be aware of his religious or non-religious thoughts. And yet people that are trying to be president or senators or congressmen these days, they almost, if they don't go by the line that they're religious, they would never be elected. And it's like they're living in fear that they can't let their true feelings be known. You'd never get as far as being in political office unless you had the religious line that most of the people in the country do.
They have to protest that they are religious, whether they are or not. A recent poll asking people would they vote for various sort of maybe oddball categories, they were more inclined to vote for a woman, a homosexual, an African American, than they would vote for an atheist.
Right.
Well, we're going to have to leave this program at that point. I do want to thank all of you for being here, and particularly Jim. It's been a pleasure having you with us, and we in NOHP share many of your viewpoints. Thank you all for being here with us. We hope you will be watching our show again next week, and feel free to contact us and tell us how you feel about our programs. Come to our meetings whenever you can. We meet once a month, and we'll be glad to give you the information. If you call the telephone number you will see at the end of this show.